The global stage is an entirely anarchic system. There is no overarching authority to enforce the rules, no international police force, and no global 911 to call when a hostile neighbor decides to cross your borders. To survive in an environment where you are solely responsible for your own defense, countries form alliances. They signal united strength to the rest of the world, operating on a very simple but brutal principle. If you attack one of us, you fight all of us. This is the ultimate tool for deterrence. An alliance is designed to function as a massive security shield, projecting enough collective firepower to prevent a conflict before the first shot is ever fired. But forging that peace requires a terrifying compromise. By signing a mutual defense treaty, a nation deliberately ties its own survival to the actions and the judgment of foreign governments. That compromise holds a fatal vulnerability. What happens when your ally picks a fight or gets dragged into a border dispute that has absolutely nothing to do with your own national interests? This scenario is known as alliance entrapment. It occurs when a reluctant state is pulled into an unwanted war solely because of the legal obligations baked into their security agreements. It presents leaders with an impossible choice. You either sacrifice your own citizens' lives and national treasure for a foreign conflict you don't care about, or you refuse, break the treaty, and permanently destroy your country's international credibility. The exact mechanism built to secure a nation's peace becomes the coercive chain pulling it directly into violence. This is exactly how the complex web of European security pacts functioned, leading up to the First World War. Global powers like Britain and France marched into a global slaughter, legally bound to honor commitments to smaller allies like Belgium and Serbia. Fast forward to the Vietnam War. Sweeping, broad policy commitments to contain communism entangled the United States in a prolonged, intensely costly regional conflict in the jungles of Southeast Asia, far outside its own direct security sphere. History proves the pattern. The rigid obligations of military alliances routinely transform isolated, regional disputes into massive, era-defining conflicts. Political scientists often distinguish alliance entrapment from a closely related hazard known as chain ganging. Chain ganging is a structural hazard. It describes a system so rigidly interconnected that if one domino falls, the strict architecture of the alliance automatically drags every other state into war. Entrapment, however, relies on active psychological and political coercion. It is the specific pressure applied to a reluctant state that desperately wants to stay out of the fight, but feels compelled to join anyway to save its reputation. Which raises an obvious question. If signing these treaties carries such a dangerous risk of getting trapped, why don't states just remain completely neutral? Because of the harsh reality of the geopolitical trade-off. Avoiding alliances completely does eliminate the risk of entrapment, but it also destroys your deterrence. A neutral, unaligned nation is isolated, making it highly vulnerable to attack. Experiencing alliance entrapment is rarely a sign of weak leadership. It is simply the materialization of a calculated risk that states are forced to accept for their own survival. This tension persists in modern security architecture, specifically within NATO and its foundational Collective Defense Clause, Article 5. Article 5 is widely considered the single most successful deterrent in modern history, keeping the core of Europe safe for decades. Yet it carries the ultimate entrapment risk. An attack on a single member state, even over a peripheral border dispute, could legally obligate the entire military alliance to mobilize for a confrontation they would otherwise avoid entirely. Because of the sheer scale and firepower of modern coalitions, the consequences of entrapment are no longer confined to muddy trenches. We are now talking about the risk of global nuclear escalation. So how do modern states navigate this terrifying paradox without dissolving the alliances that keep them safe? The primary defense mechanism is the fine print. Nations no longer hand out blank checks for security. Instead, diplomats meticulously specify the geographic borders and political scopes of their military obligations. They manage the entrapment risk by inserting careful opt-out clauses into treaties and maintaining constant back-channel communication to align allied expectations long before a crisis actually erupts. Geopolitical success depends on drafting treaties so precisely that an ally's enemies do not automatically become your own.